And as advertised, we are joined by Tim Vickery. Hi, Tim.
Very good evening to you, Joe Malloy. How are you?
Very well. I missed you on BBC at the weekend. I was disgusted. I tuned in. I was looking forward to this game. I tuned in. I saw Chapman and friends in the BBC studio. And at one point, he said to Jonathan Wilson, and as Tim just said in his package, and I said, I bet that's Vickery. That has to be Vickery.
Guilty as charged, sir. Guilty as charged.
You were on prime time, Tim. You made it big.
Yeah, I was otherwise engaged, though, during game time. Otherwise, they might have hauled me in for more. I was doing the international feed from Buenos Aires, which was... so I had to go down on the Friday morning. I went down from Rio to Buenos Aires, accompanied on the plane by a plane load of Flamengo fans on their way to Lima. Now, get out the map. Look at the map, and you will see the insanity of that. You know, they're going a fair way south in order to go a long way north, but it was the only way they could get there. The sacrifices that the fans made to get to this game, quite extraordinary. It's one of those games that no one who was there will ever forget it. I suspect that in 20 years' time, it'll be a little bit like the first Sex Pistols concert. You know, every Flamengo fan will be saying, yeah, I was there. I was there. I was 70 hours on a bus to get there. Long, sad journey for the River Plate fans who made the trip up to Lima. But I suppose when we knew it was going to sacrifice the fans, and that is the downside of this new policy started this year of having the one-off game on a neutral ground. It is hard on the fans because South America is not Europe. The distances are vast, travel is expensive, income is badly distributed. But I think the authorities will concede that they will happily hold the opinion that the change has been vindicated because there were two real justifications for it. Number one, they were very keen on getting a wider international audience, and this they have done. As we were saying there, it was on BBC TV live. Now, that's never going to happen if it's two games in the middle of the night. But one game Saturday afternoon, our time, Saturday evening, your time, yes, they got a wider audience. And the other justification was, or the hope beforehand, you're going to get a better game. You're going to get a better standard, a better quality of spectacle. And I think that happened as well because it was certainly dramatic. You know, so often when it's at the old home and away format, if the home side's winning, then the ball boys will all disappear and the clock will be run down and the old shenanigans will come out. You get less of that, I think, on a neutral ground. So although the fans were sacrificed and many fans priced out of this showpiece occasion, I think one conclusion of Saturday's big game is this new format is here to stay.
So Flamengo, for a moment, just to put them into context, River Plate, I think we talk about a bit more from time to time, crowned Brazilian champions for the 7th time in their history, the first time in 10 years, the day after this final because of results elsewhere. So that's a good 24, 48 hours for them. And we've all seen pictures of the homecoming. Now, I remember from being in Rio during the World Cup that Flamengo was a very beautiful part of Rio, right in the coast, very stylish. And I was told that all the Brazilian soaps are often based in places like Flamengo, and that unlike the UK where they kind of go towards more the working class areas in Coronation Street and EastEnders.
Ain't that the truth? I'm speaking to you from Flamengo right now. There are plusher neighbourhoods. The plusher neighbourhoods along the coast, the Copacabana, Ipanema especially, Ipanema and Leblon, where most of the soap operas are based. But that's a very true sociological observation. English soaps tend to revel in traditional working class culture, whereas Brazilian soaps are much more aspirational. But the story of Flamengo is, I mean, this is a club that began life as an elite club, as the vast majority of Brazilian clubs did. But during the 1930s, they had a very bright president who saw the way that the political winds were blowing. There was a new Brazil with a new identity. The samba musicians who'd earlier been persecuted were suddenly being lauded as national heroes. And Flamengo signed the leading 3 black players of the day, and it gave them a complete rebranding. They really acquired the popular touch. And Rio at the time was the capital. Radio absolutely vital here for spreading the game to the far-flung corners of this giant country. And so radio is taking the games of the Rio teams, and Flamengo have just at the right time acquired this popular touch, and it means that they are an absolutely national phenomenon. They are the most supported club in many states of Brazil. They can fill stadiums thousands and thousands of miles away. So the question from this, and you alluded to it earlier on, why have we talked about them so little? Why are they not as well known as River Plate? Now, that has a lot to do, I think, with decades of bad administration. They were deep in financial problems for many years. In fact, I remember them a few times fighting against relegation. In the last few years, they've got their finances sorted out. Then they went shopping, and the final piece of the jigsaw was bringing in the Portuguese coach, Jorge Jesus. Now, what happened on Saturday, I think, could not only be a kind of the one mistake from Lucas Prato of River Plate, and the game was won for River Plate. River Plate had won the game. Lucas Prato, the reserve substitute striker, the hero of last year's finals against Boca Juniors, he scored in both legs. The villain, very much of this one, came on, looked in no kind of nick at all, wasted a few promising opportunities, and then dwelt on the ball twice. And River Plate had men forward, committed. He had one warning when he nearly lost the ball, and then he lost it, and Flamengo went right down the other end and equalised. And that I think, that error, it could turn out not only to be a game changer, but to be a sport changer. Because had he played taken a more rational option, played a hopeful forward pass, or even blasted it into row Z, River Plate win the game. And Flamengo would be then domestic phenomenon. They've rolled over Brazilian opposition. They haven't been able to do it against foreign opposition. Now, Flamengo have the chance to fulfill their potential as a genuine global powerhouse. They've got the World Club Cup coming up next month, when obviously they're dreaming of taking on Liverpool. They've got a place now in the new FIFA's new expanded World Club Cup in 2021. And with the exposure they're going to get, there really is the potential. And we're all looking for something outside Europe, because one of the big themes of the global game in the last couple of decades is the absolute domination of the big European club sides. Can anyone threaten that? Well, Flamengo, I think, are best placed to threaten that. And so much of that now, so many of those opportunities now, you can trace back to one mistake from River Plate's Lucas Prato.
And then, well, if we're dwelling on the mistake then for a moment, come on in, Gabriel Barbosa. People may remember his name. He was a big money signing for Inter Milan a couple of years ago, back in 2016. And it didn't quite happen for him. He was a young man then. He's still quite young. So you might just, Tim, for people who haven't seen the game, explain his eventful last 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, he did nothing really for 89 minutes. He got himself sent off in the 95th minute. And in between, he did enough to win the Man of the Match award and change the course of the game. And as we're saying, perhaps change the course of the sport. He is a very talented left-footed striker. There's skill there. There's pace there. There's a lovely left foot. Is he a genuine global superstar? Well, he failed badly in Europe, really badly. As you said, big money signing at Inter Milan. They got nothing from him. A lot of players have failed at Inter Milan recently. There's obviously been something wrong with the setup. But he went to Benfica, where you would think, the Portuguese league doesn't have the same depth. He's going to fire there. Didn't fire at all, and then went back to Brazil to rebuild his career. Why didn't he fire in Europe? I think maybe there are two explanations. One is that he is a little bit of an idiot. He burns a very short fuse. He's been sent off in the last 2 games that he's played, and he picks up cards every week. He can't control himself. Temperamentally, I think he struggled in Europe with the fact that he was one in a deep squad rather than the spoilt special one, as he's been able to be in Brazil. And the other reason, and I think there was plenty of evidence for this in the first 89 minutes of the game, is that, your centre forward, your striker, the really great strikers, they're two-footed. And he is very left-footed. There were chances there for Flamengo where maybe he could have opened things up. Right, he likes to come in on the right side of the penalty area. Had he gone wide onto his right foot, but he didn't fancy it. Always cutting in onto his left foot. So you wonder if, because I don't think the River Plate centre-backs are particularly good players. It was one of the questions I was asking about the game before. I can't see how River Plate can defend against Flamengo. Well, in the end, they couldn't. It took 89 minutes for the wall to collapse, but it did collapse. You wonder against the world's great centre-backs. But we could well have a chance to see that fairly soon, because if it is Flamengo against Liverpool in the final of the Club World Cup, then let's see him against Virgil van Dijk.
So he scores, booked for removing his shirt, scores again. Then a River Plate player gets sent off. He sarcastically claps the referee at that decision, and then he gets his second yellow.
Yeah, these are the kind of bookings, the cards that he picks up all the time. In the previous league game, he was booked for dissent and clapped the referee and ironically and immediately got another yellow and was sent his marching orders. There's a big phrase in Brazil which has been used all year. Today there's a goal from Gabigol. And as one former pundit said going into the Libertadores final, unfortunately, you might as well always say today there's a yellow card for Gabigol. Emotional control is not his strong point, and he's 23. Fascinating moment in his career. Just in the last few years, the big European clubs have been increasingly reluctant to bring in players from South America in their mid-20s. They really want to get them in 18, 19, so they can whip them into shape from a tactical point of view early. What's he going to do now? He's still under contract with Inter Milan. Flamengo want to buy him. They can probably afford to buy him, especially with the money that they're making from winning the Libertadores. But what does he really want? Because does he consider Europe unfinished business? Because if he leaves it too long, he may not get a chance with a big club in Europe. I mean, he could go to Europe in 2 or 3 years' time, but it would almost certainly be a smaller club, and he'd have to try and work his way up. Yeah. So what does he want? Fascinating question, I think. Yeah, because I do take your point about the defending very much on board, because even the second goal, I didn't realise he was so left-footed, but the defending for the second goal where he's in a 2v1 and they managed to head it over to his left side. Routine punt up front. You've got two centre-backs there. I don't particularly rate either of them. Martinez Cuarta, the young one, there's a fuss being made in him in Argentina, and he recently played for the Argentine national team. But there is a tendency for them to big up too much some of their young defenders, and I don't really see him anywhere near the highest level. And alongside him, Pinola, who until the 2 goals had a really good game, but he's 36, and he doesn't quite have the pace over the first 5 yards. I mean, a few years ago, I think he would have been able to stop the ball coming in for that vital equalising goal. And you always thought, and it was there in the game. It was hints of that in the game. If the Flamengo strikers can get into open space against these River Plate centre-backs, it's party time. Yeah. But until that error from Lucas Prato, it was a tactical masterclass from the River Plate coach Marcelo Gallardo, who'd studied Flamengo very, very much and knew how to contain them and where to hurt them. Yeah. And they pressed them early. When the pair of strikers worked astonishingly hard. They were the last line of attack and the first line of defence, and they stopped Flamengo building up, establishing any rhythm from deep. And Flamengo never really got going until those 2 goals in that crazy 3 minutes. They had only seriously threatened once. And that was a little bit controversial because there was a River Plate player down and Flamengo refused to put the ball out. Right. So it really was a tactical triumph for Marcelo Gallardo, the River Plate coach, who ends up on the losing side. Such is life, and it's given Flamengo their Sharing Himself-scare moment. And we saw that we showed put up a picture of the parade. I mean, I know they're fond of parades in that part of the world, Tim, but this seemed extraordinary by any measure. Yes, it is. Yes, and rounded off the next day by winning the Brazilian title as well. They're playing at home tomorrow, a vital game for their opponents, Ceará, who are fighting against relegation. But I think it's going to be party time. And they've waited a long, long time for this, and they are an absolutely massive club. They are a club whose tendency to shout the odds a little bit can irritate. And people in Brazil, most people in Brazil, if they're not Flamengo fans, are desperate for Flamengo to lose. Although that has changed a little bit over recent months because of the way they've played under Jorge Jesus. You didn't see them at anything like their best in the final on Saturday. But believe me, for the last few months in the Brazilian league, they have been so refreshing. Most Brazilian clubs defend deep, and it's an empire of caution with coaches afraid to lose their jobs and playing defensively. Jorge Jesus has come in with a totally different philosophy, high defensive line, throwing 8 men forward. It's been fabulous to watch, and even some people who traditionally despise Flamengo have been getting behind them and were delighted that they won on Saturday. Who's Tim Vickery's Brazilian club of choice, by the way? I really don't have one. I don't quite understand those people who do, because your identity, Joe Malloy, is non-negotiable. And I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan, and when the ball goes in the net of any other club, I don't feel anything. My relationship with the game here, well, firstly, it's a professional one because I work with it, sure. But also that in terms of emotional involvement, I tend to get more emotionally involved with individual players, because the big privilege of what I do is being able to see the players on the way up.
Yeah.
So, you spot someone at 18, 19, and you think, wow, this is special. Well, and you become like a supporter of his no matter where he's playing.
Well, interestingly, I was at a talk recently. That is the way football fandom is going generally anyway. The youngest generation don't really support clubs. They support Neymar. So as soon as he leaves PSG for Real Madrid, they'll buy a Real Madrid Neymar jersey. That's kind of how it's working now for the YouTube generation. Hey, you mentioned Empire of Caution there. So you must be looking forward to Jose Mourinho's stint.
I'm still trying to assimilate it all. It's he's an unbearable genius, but he's become my unbearable genius. Yeah, well, I wonder. It's not a natural fit, is it?
No.
He is an I've been enjoying, just seeing, talk about the YouTube generation. I've been enjoying on YouTube seeing his contributions to punditry this year, and because it really has been a voyage inside his mind, and you see the structural way that he breaks down the game, and you see that the clarity of thought, and he's clearly been able over the course of his career to pass on the clarity of thought to his players. And sometimes I've wondered in recent years if the kind of personality that he's created has got too big and he's become a little bit of a prisoner of this personality. But I did enjoy that line in his opening press conference there at Tottenham, saying that he's not going to make the old mistakes. Any mistakes he's going to make now are new ones. It's a little bit borrowed from Mike Tyson when he came out of prison, and Tyson said, "I'm not going to get ripped off by all the old people. I'm going to get ripped off by new people." So Tyson probably did it a little bit better. But part of the knack in this world is to know to borrow from the best, and Mourinho did with that quote.
Okay. Just very finally, to extend the Empire business a touch further, not that this is crucial, but why was the trophy brought onto the field at the start of the game surrounded by fully kitted out, authentic, straight from the movie stormtroopers?
I absolutely have no idea, and I was commentating. I was on the international feed at that time, and right. Well, what on earth has this got to do with it? I was desperately struggling for any references that I could make to Death Stars and so on. But no, it made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Just part of the fun of the fair, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is there a new film coming out? Is there some?
We wondered. Yeah, there must have been something like that. But nobody. There is a new film coming out. There is, isn't there? There is. That rings a bell. That rings a bell.
Right. So the South American Confederation have probably earned some money for it, which is, after all that corruption scandal a few years ago, trying to earn some money is fairly high up their list of priorities. So if you made an offer to call it the Joe Malloy Copa Libertadores, they'd probably consider it.
Well, we have the resources here to think about that, Tim. So we might get on that. Listen, great stuff. Thanks as ever. Appreciate it. Good man. And actually, we're gonna have to dig out some Tim Vickery commentary, I think. So you're on the world feed. That's where we'll find it.
Yeah, the international feed. I don't know where you find it. It just goes out to the ether. But find it somewhere.
No, we'll find. Expect to hear it as your next intro.
Look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Tim. See you.
Cheers.